if you go down to the bottom of your screen, you can chat to everybody. I'll just type something now. So don't want to get too fancy with people, but if you want to get our attention and you want to type a question while someone else is talking, go for it. So it's 1:02, so I will jump in. This is the first ever SynGAP, SRF, whatever, online parents sharing knowledge of parents thing. So this is being recorded. We will post the recording online, just to let everyone know. So maybe if we could just quickly go through, and let me just call on you so we don't have too much chaos. And if everybody could just introduce themselves, and then we'll jump in. So I'm Mike, I'm in California. Lauren, you're next on my list. Do you mind just introducing yourself quickly?
Oh, sure. This is Lauren in Colorado. My son's 9, Will.
9, Will. Got it. Okay, Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay from McKinney, Texas. My son is 2.5, Carter.
Cool. Verena.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Verena. I'm from Germany, and my son is Jamie. He will turn 6 end of the month. We are not on keto. I have very much respect of people doing this, and I want to learn as much as I can about it.
Cool. That's why we're here. Monica.
Monica Harding. Jaxon is 14, almost 14, in San Diego.
Awesome. Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah Feldman. My son Jacob is 7.
Cool. And where are you, Hannah?
San Diego.
Sweet. From
San Diego. Okay. Awesome. And then who have I missed? Kelda, you're in here, but you're presenting. Yeah. And then Peter. Go ahead.
Sorry, Mike. I'm Kelda.
No,
I've got Hannah, who's a month off 7, and we're in Australia.
Month off 7. Olga, we're just doing introductions. Okay, Olga's still getting set up. Jess, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm in New York City. I've also got a Hannah. She's 2.5. And I have a baby here. He's Alex. He's 10 weeks old.
Wow. Okay, have I missed anybody? I don't think so. Sarah Morris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. Hello. I'm in England. We've got Sonny, and he's 9.
Great.
We've been working for a little while now.
Okay, so I'm going to mute everybody and start plowing through the slides. Thank you all for being here. Okay, mute. Current and new participants will be muted. Continue. Okay, so now I'm muted, I think. Can you guys hear me? Well, how would you? Yes, you can. You're nodding. Lovely. Okay, so here we go. All of this information is on this website. So if you go to syngapresearchfund.com/knowledge, there's a section on keto at the bottom, and there's a link to this entire presentation. So you don't have to write anything down. It's all there. If you have questions, just type them in the chat. So quickly, what we're going to do, I'm going to try to briefly give you guys some perspective on keto and epilepsy by really referencing just 2 papers. So if you want more, you could go there. And then these 5 parents are going to share: Kelda, Dani, Mike, Sarah, and Monica, and I'm Mike. No one here is a doctor. Nothing here is medical advice. You should talk to a physician before doing anything. And then all the parents who participated happen to have also put their kids up on our Wednesday Warrior, our Instagram channel. So if you're curious to see the kids they're talking about, those links will get you right to that Instagram profile. Dani has not yet joined, but maybe she will. And a little bit of a movie ad here. There is this movie called First Do No Harm. It's a true story. It was with Meryl Streep, and you can tell from the poster it's been a while, but it's a story about a kid who had intractable epilepsy, and none of the meds worked, and the mom did some research and said, what about this ketogenic diet thing? And the doctor was like, that's crazy, don't do it. And the doctor tried to stop her, and she did it anyway, and it worked. So it's a little bit of a drama. It might feel a little too close to home for many of us, but it's some history on how the ketogenic diet came back in. And again, always talk to a physician first, but if you don't like what your physician says, maybe go get another physician. Just a thought. So one of the papers that's recent, January of 2019, is called Ketogenic Diet and Epilepsy, What We Know So Far. And I will note that Sarah, like this morning, shared another paper with me. It's about ketogenic practice that I will share out. I will put up on the website. But these were the big chunks from the summary, and this paper is well worth reading, and that link works. The takeaway here is dietary treatments for diseases have probably been used for over 2,000 years. And then there's a lot of other stuff, and I was like, this is too much. So I simplified it even more on this slide. So the main points that you would take from this paper are, we've been using diet for disease for a couple millennia. Harvard Medical School has noted that starvation was a treatment for epilepsy and saw improvement in a couple days, right? So starvation and keto isn't starvation, but just noticing this impact on epilepsy was in the literature back in 2008. Their first patient was a 7-year-old girl, and before they went over to classic keto diet, which is CKD, they said maybe you should do Atkins for a week just to get used to the diet. And just with 3 days of the Atkins, before they even got to keto, her seizure stopped. And this is documented in that paper 2013. So what is Atkins and what is keto? I'll let Sarah talk about what is keto because she's living through it in the deep end right now. But modified Atkins is really, or the MAD diet, is really three things, right? It's low carbs, high fat foods, and the goal is seizure control. So I wouldn't say that I'm doing keto. I would say that we're doing modified Atkins. And even though we have so many anti-epileptic drugs that none of us can keep them straight, still a full third of patients are refractory, meaning they don't respond to these meds. So this diet that's been around for a long time, it is a tool that everybody should consider. It's not a substitute for drugs. For many of us, it's a complement, but this is all written up in this paper that I would encourage everybody to read and shove into the hands of your pediatrician and your neuro. Next slide. There's one other paper I would really urge you guys to look at, and that is this one. So it's June 2018, just last year, and we heard the author of this speak at at this Epilepsy Precision Medicine conference earlier this year. Basically, it was UCLA trying to figure out how the ketogenic diet works. Nobody actually understands how the ketogenic diet works. Some people say maybe it's something in the gut. Some people say, well, your brain is being fed by ketones because what's happening is you don't have carbs, so you're not burning carbs, so you start burning fat. And when you're burning fat, your brain is fed by ketones, and that's where the ketogenic word comes from. But still, no one's quite sure the mechanism through which it stops epilepsy. But this paper basically went through, you can read it, and essentially what they did is they identified 2 bacteria that really increased dramatically when these mice were on keto. And they took these bacteria, isolated them, stuck them into seizing mice, and the mice stopped seizing. I'm summarizing a long paper. But, and the pathway that these bacteria act on is the GABA pathway, which we know is related to SynGAP. There's footnotes at the bottom. But this is super interesting because it basically suggests why it would make any sense that modified Atkins works for some and not others. Because by virtue of this diet, you increase these 2 bacteria, and these 2 bacteria somehow affect the pathway that's causing seizures. Again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not pretending to be a scientist, but we heard this author speak, and we were in a room with a lot of brainiacs at this precision medicine conference, and everyone was like, yeah, this is super cool. So just a thought that the diet really matters, and there's a potential explanation out there that's relatively recent in the literature, so we need to keep repeating these experiments. So with that, I want to give this over to Kelda to talk. The reason we're starting with her is this whole thing started with Kelda asking some questions on a Facebook group. So I just want to turn it over to her to talk a little bit about Hannah and how she's thinking about it as our first speaker. So I'm going to unmute you, Kelda, and over to you.
Hi. I don't know anything, so I'm here as a parent who wants to learn, like I think a lot of us. So I've got Hannah, who's almost 7. Was diagnosed only quite recently with SynGAP, and she's on 2 seizure meds, Rivotril and Lamictal, and she still has like 50 to 100 seizures a day, if not more. She's generally behavior pretty good, although she has her moments. But it was really watching Sarah with Sunny doing the keto diet there, and then hearing Mike talking about the MAD diet with Tony that got us questioning things. And we've done so many diets with Hannah, like gluten, dairy-free, FODMAP, GAPS, all of those. So she's actually pretty good at accepting a diet, which is lucky. But we were just questioning and wanted to hear more about what people had success with, what people had struggled with, because I've got June, who's 4, and Micah, who's 19 months. So, you know, I don't know if they're going to love bone broth or whatever it is that we're going to eat. So I was just really here as an interested parent wanting to get information and tips, and because we all love our kids and to learn from you all.
And then you had these questions on the bottom, right?
Yeah, so I just had some generic questions that I thought might be interesting to hopefully more than just me here. So the main questions that we had were, you know, what is the difference between keto and MAD, and can you get away with just doing the MAD diet rather than full on keto? Hannah's neurologist is Professor Sheffer, who lots of you know, and we just had a meeting with her last week, and she was saying that for keto, it would be a 5-day stay in a hospital in Melbourne, which is 3.5 hours away from where we live. So that would, you know, just logistically be quite difficult with other kids, and my husband's a shift worker. So, you know, if we could avoid doing the MAD, but then, you know, obviously we'll try it if we can. So wanted to know the differences and whether there was a difference in, you know, seizure control, because that's our ultimate goal. How difficult it was to maintain with other family members, and what do you wish that you had known before you started these diets, and how do you prepare for it? Because I was looking at my grocery shop the other day, and it was just like bread, bananas, you know, pasta. I was like, okay, so I can't eat that, can't eat that, can't eat that. I was like, oh God. And then, you know, so anyways, to pre-game keto or MAD. So I know, Mike, you said going gluten-free, things like that.
Yeah. And this link at the bottom is where you're likely to do it if you do it, right? That's the hospital you're going to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this next slide, this next slide is sort of, I just threw out a couple of immediate answers. Keto is very strict, ton of work, requires medical supervision. MAD is a lot more flexible, still lots of work and less dangerous, but also potentially less effective, if I'm honest. How difficult with the other family members? I think the answer is how flexible is your other family members? And then what do you wish you'd known before starting keto MAD? My only point here is I think everyone should try MAD first. It's just it's a natural step. And I think gluten-free is essential because anything with gluten will have carbs. And then, yeah.
Sorry, so then Mike, I was doing some more research on it, and like keto, obviously, Sarah, you know more than I do, definitely, about like how involved the hospital is and the neurologist, and, you know, you've got to measure all your foods. So with MAD, how do you actually know you're in ketosis?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me pump that so when I'm talking, I'm conscious of time. Cool. But it's a really good question, and I'll come back to it. And I'll also come back to the inulin point that I make down here. So with that, Dani was going to talk. Do we have Dani on the call?
No, Dan's away at the moment, so she's pumped.
Okay, so Dani has, let me just quickly mention her slides. There she is. Dani, it's your slides. Dani is muted. I will unmute her. Dani, can you hear us?
I can.
Brilliant. It's exactly your slide. You joined at the perfect moment.
How amazing
and I took your slide and I turned it into 2 slides, Dani. So go for it.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
So I just, did you want me to talk more about our experience for new people, or more just to share experience for people who have done it before and still doing it?
I think just maybe just share your story, because we just had Kelda go, and then you're going, and then it'll be me and Sarah and Monica. So just tell a little bit your story and what people to know.
Cool. So we have, as you guys know, we've got the 2 little girls, and we trialed many anticonvulsants with Jaylee when she started having seizures when she was about 8 months old. And then by the time she was 2.5, we'd tried, I think, 5 or 6 anticonvulsants, which weren't doing anything. So Ingrid, in fact, it wasn't Ingrid, but Ingrid has authored that book. We were under the care of another neurologist at the time, and we'd kind of pushed to start the keto. And there was a hospital admission required. So prior to the hospital admission, we tried the modified Atkins. So we tried that with a private dietitian for a few months, and it was fine. And then we got admitted to hospital in the December 2012. And 3 or 4 days admission. After that, Jaylee was on the full classic keto. And it was amazing. It was the first thing she had done that actually stopped her seizures. And even upon reflection, it's the only thing, where now she's nearly 10, next week she's 10. Upon reflection, it's the only thing that stopped her seizures. The only problem was it came along with a few other things, like very bad sleep, very bad moods, bad skin, and we didn't know if it was directly correlated, but it happened at the same time. So I'm still not sure if it was directly correlated. And what happened after 6 months is the seizures came back. So we were faced with this decision where all of the pros were kind of taken out of the situation, and it was just a no-brainer. We had to stop. And at that point, Dali was on the modified Atkins, and we were going to start her on the keto, and we never did. And she was very lethargic on the modified Atkins. So in hindsight, and after speaking to Laura Ma over the last few years, we probably made a mistake in having a high lactose, high casein diet, and that might have actually really impacted our experience negatively. So you can see we used a lot of resources. I thought I'd put that in for you just to, I mean, I'm happy to share, although I couldn't get it off my ancient laptop that I used back then. We used spreadsheets, and we calculated the amount of carbs, protein, fat, and then we added MCT oil in, and we had our favorite recipes. So we had oopsie rolls. I don't know if anyone else makes oopsie rolls. I don't even know if they're still in the cookbooks these days. And it was like a pancake with cottage cheese, and it was delicious. And a snack which Jaylee absolutely loved was just whipped cream with strawberries. That was her favorite snack. And then we'd make her pizzas, and I cannot remember the base, but I could probably look it up. But they were her favorites, and we would eat them. But she also loved a salad with a very rich fatty dressing. And that was one of the biggest issues for us, was the lack of fruit, because my girls love fruit and veg. So that was one of the biggest challenges for us.
Yeah. And you want to just talk to your pictures for a second?
Sure. So that the first 2 are the hospital admission. So it was around Christmas time. So we had a photo in the Christmas chair with a Christmas tree behind us, and that was pleasant enough. But yeah, they're pretty strict in Australia, and starting the diet was getting your baseline bloods, and then getting you into ketosis before you go home. And then Jaylee actually tore her hair out. She tore, you can see the second last picture there, she started tearing her hair out, and by the end, that last picture, she'd actually tore all the hair out on one side of her head. She had extreme tantrums, just mostly while we were on the ketogenic diet. And again, I'm not saying it was the diet. It was probably something we were doing on the diet, but there was a correlation there for sure.
Yeah, awesome. I know we're going to lose Dani soon. So does anyone have any pressing questions for Dani? If anyone's got a question, just type it into the chat. Otherwise, I will move on. Hannah, I see your hand up. Look at you. I didn't even know you could do that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
So my question is, Dani, you had a 4-to-1 ratio written on your slide. What is that in reference to?
Dani, you might be muted too. Hang on. Go ahead.
Yep, it's 4 parts fat to 1 part protein carbs. So we started with a 2-to-1 ratio, and then we went up to 4, and we went down to 3, and then we went back up to 4, and it's just finding that balance. That you want the lowest ratio that will actually get you into ketosis and keep you in ketosis.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the lowest ratio is least restrictive.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say generally when you go to the hospital, they're trying to get you onto 4-to-1, and probably Tony is on like 2.5 or 3-to-1. And sometimes in extreme cases, I've heard doctors mention maybe we need to get you to 6-to-1, and I just don't understand how that works if you're not being tube fed. Like that's basically pure fat.
Yeah. But there were times when we needed to do we gave lemonade because her ketones, it was not in the right range. So it's kind of finding that balance.
Yeah. Okay. So, and Olga just typed in a question, which I thought was really good. If seizures are controlled, I want to let you chime in on this, Dani, then I'm going to keep going. If seizures are controlled by meds for most part, is diet beneficial in any way for SynGAP kiddos?
I think it's a good question. I don't think I'm the right person to answer it, but some people would argue that it's better for the body, but others would argue that it's probably not better for the body. I think it depends how confident you are with your anticonvulsants and their long-term impact.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if you're okay, Dani, I'm going to keep going.
Go for it.
Is that cool? All right. Thank you so much for chiming in. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go back to muting everyone. Continue. Okay. So next is Uz. Ashley couldn't make it, but so Tony is now 5. He was not responding well to his medication. We were measuring his seizures pretty diligently. We got a 40% reduction in his seizures, but we had 100% side effects, meaning I didn't recognize my kid on Lamictal. And so we begged our way into the keto diet at Stanford, which is a good medical institution, and it was the worst 6 days of my life. Tony got very sick. It was way too much. It was really hard. The hospital was like throwing up their hands. They're like, this is the protocol. This is what we do. And they were like, maybe it's just not going to work. You should just give up. And at one point, his blood sugar dropped so low that we had to give him like fruit juice. And to the question Hannah asked before about ratio, they start you on like 2-to-1 on day 1, and then 3-to-1, and then 4-to-1. And I think we'll hear from other families, but I've heard a number of SynGAP kids when they do this hospital stay, it doesn't go well. And so we got home, and Tony was literally like tearing furniture off the walls, saying he wanted ice cream. And we were really, really defeated. And so here's Tony in the hospital, just sleeping. Here's actually, that's a pretty good looking meal compared to some of the stuff they were feeding him. And that soup, if you're curious, is just like 110% cream. That third picture is actually Tony looks kind of happy. And that fourth picture is really what Tony looked like most of the time, kind of totally just not happy. That is not a good picture of my son. And then we got home and we had this book sitting on the table, and like an idiot, I finally read it after we did the hospital stay, right, instead of before. So I would really urge everyone to buy this book if you're thinking about this. And one of the things I read was where it said what I talked to you about on the first slide, which is some people get benefits just on modified Atkins. And I was like, God, I wish I'd known this. And so we just spent 6 days in the hospital trying to get into ketosis. So I said, well, let's not give up completely, because we definitely weren't interested in keeping it going. Let's just downshift to MAD, right? So MAD is a looser ratio. You're not sitting there measuring every gram of food. And I said, let's just, we worked really hard to get this far. Let's do modified Atkins. At the time we were on CBD oil. So now we're on modified Atkins and CBD. And those two things together have stopped the seizures. So this slide is just across the top. You can kind of see what Tony thinks of as a meal. It's basically meat and fat, and like onions or you know, cauliflower, peppers. Everything there is low net carbs or no carbs. So net carb is the amount of carbs in something less the fiber, right? So there's no fiber in like bananas, those are all carbs. But it turns out strawberries and raspberries have a lot of carbs. So really on modified Atkins, you're counting net carbs. And you're just piling on the fat. And really Tony's diet, our kitchen is full of stevia, almond flour, cream cheese, sour cream, coconut oil, all these things. So even though the full hospital induction was really hard and very traumatic, downshifting to MAD proved to have been worth it. And now that's how we live. Like if Ashley and I want pasta or something carby, we eat it out. We don't eat it in. And I just want to, this is another, to come back to that point I made about bacteria earlier. So this is sort of what, this is not sort of, this is exactly what Tony has for breakfast every single day. Coconut chips disguised as granola, a couple of raspberries, high-fat yogurt, peanut butter, chia seeds, which are pure fiber, and a little bit of inulin. And literally that's what he eats every day. It's just a fat bowl full of fiber with a raspberry on top. But the reason that inulin is circled in red, and if this is too much, just ignore it. But probiotics are stuff you spend a lot of money on in the grocery store, and maybe they help. It's debatable. Prebiotics are just simple fibers that feed the bacteria in your gut. And inulin is a really inexpensive prebiotic. And if it is true that the keto diet works by virtue of those two bacteria, then adding some inulin to your keto meals might be helpful. Now, there's a whole other thing about the Nemechek protocol and inulin, and sometimes the kids get amped up. I don't have time to get into that, but just flagging for you that there are these little tweaks that are super inexpensive that are also potentially dietary ways to help our kiddos. And then I would also add, thanks Deanna, Deanna just sent me a message. In our experience with Tony, not only does the modified Atkins diet in combination with CBD stop his visible seizures, and we don't think he's not having absent seizures either, because he just got sick back in November. We had like a 30-hour EEG, no seizures. But we do think he's more awake and more cognitively switched on when he's on keto, when he's on modified Atkins. So we are fans of this diet in a big way. And then before I go to the next person, anyone with Netflix, here's an ad about the keto diet generally. So just, if you're interested in learning more, here's another movie you could watch on Netflix just to get your head wrapped around keto if you're thinking about this. And with that, I will pass it over to the Jedi of keto that I know of in our community, the woman who's been doing this in the deep end. And we all have a lot to learn from Sarah. So I will unmute you, Sarah, and over to you.
Hi. That's nice of you, but I'm not sure that's true. I think we just have a different experience, really, with it, and I've kind of documented it along the way. So I hope that is helpful to some people. But yeah, we're in the UK, so things are a little different here. We work with the NHS system. So when you request to have a ketogenic diet for your child, you have to go through a referral kind of process, which takes some time because it's a very stretched service, as everything else is. So that took about six to 9 months just to get to see the dietitian. And the way we do it here is, unless it's kind of like an emergency situation, where a child is admitted into hospital to start keto immediately because nothing else is working, that can be used in an emergency. But that's rare, and generally the keto diet is started at home. So you have meetings with the dietitian beforehand. You fill in forms where you have a whole list of foods and you tick things that your child will eat and things that your child won't eat, and sort of test suitability, I guess. And the same test that you would all have in your countries, but just testing for deficiencies and also making sure that you don't have any metabolic disorders, or there's a whole load of things that they need to check for people who aren't suitable for the keto diet. So they need to check all that stuff, kidney function, all of that. So we did all of that. And then, so over here we do the introduction at home, and we do it over a process of 10 days. And before that happens, we've got a kind of pretty much a week's worth of meals worked out, planned out for that introduction time. So it's introduced gradually, which tends to make the child less sick if they're going to feel unwell from the sudden increase in fat. So we did that, and we had telephone support. That was the main thing, that we have telephone support to the dietitians, and it's really easy to get hold of them. It's not like trying to get hold of a neurologist, for sure. And so we could phone them at any time. There's also several charities which are really important to point out. In the UK, we have Matthew's Friends, and you have the Charlie Foundation in the US. I don't know about Australia. There is a charity, or anywhere else, but they're very helpful, and they've helped me at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's really great. And we also got given a ketosis blood testing kit, which is a finger prick test. So we started it off at home. It was really interesting what Mike's saying about the modified Atkins, because we started off at a 4-to-1. So here, as I've been told, generally the protocol is to start at a 4-to-1, very high ratio of fat, and then work down if it's too high. Not entirely sure what the logic in that is, but that's just how we do it here. So I just went along with that. It became very apparent very quickly that that was too much. Sonny made ketones really quickly, and they started to go really high, and he started to become unwell. The photos of Tony there, Sonny looked just like that. So we quickly moved down to a 3-to-1 ratio, and then a 2-to-1, and this was a process of about a week, and then finally settled on what is called a modified ketogenic diet. So my understanding of the difference between a modified Atkins and a modified ketogenic diet is basically the ketogenic diet is a prescribed, monitored, medicalized diet, whereas anyone could start doing the modified Atkins. So what that means is that you're given literally a prescription for your macros per day. I've got mine written out here, I don't know if you can see on there, but so I've got it written out. Photos popping up of all our food there. And we have a certain amount of fat, a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of carbs to stick to. And this is the other thing with medical support. When you do it at home with medical support, as Mike said, it's really stressful in a hospital, and so obviously at home that's going to be easier. And here it's very much the diet is built around the foods that your child already likes, so it's going to be a little bit easier in that way. I think it definitely wasn't that difficult for us, actually. We're lucky in that Sonny likes the food. Yeah, and the other thing that we got with the medical support is access to a thing called a keto calculator. So that's really brilliant. Basically, you can just put in an ingredient, you put in your targets for your fat, your protein, carbohydrates, and it will tell you how much of the ingredient you can have, literally to the gram. And the other different thing I think I've noticed with Mike and with what we do is that basically you can have any food, it's just that it's going to be a very small amount. So for example, we can make banana fritters for Sonny. It's got 29 grams, I know off by heart, it's got 29 grams of banana, which is about that much, but it makes a banana fritter and it's just a nice flavour. So he can have that because it fits in with the macros, if that makes sense. So that allows us, you know, a lot of variation in the diet. One of his favourite things are fat bombs. We can make those with coconut oil and cocoa. We can even use Nutella in there. We literally weigh it out. It's a couple of grams of Nutella. And that, making little treats like that, I think is really important to sustain a diet if you're doing it for a long time, because everyone wants Nutella, don't they? So I'm kind of getting lost of these points a bit, but yeah, MCT oil, that's the other thing that we added. That MCT oil is generally added to make ketones more easily. You can use coconut oil as a natural MCT oil, or you can get prescribed MCT oil, which is pure, and so you need to use less fat to get higher ketones. So yeah, eventually we settled on the modified ketogenic diet with his prescription, and we haven't had to change it since then. And he's been really stable, luckily, amazingly. His ketones run between 2 and 3, and that's the other thing with the medicalized version of it, is that you're aiming for a range of ketones. So we need to go between 2 and 5 is a kind of therapeutic range. This is our ketone testing kit here. So yeah, you want to go for a certain range, and then if it starts going, if your child seems unwell, you can test their ketones and you can see, oh, it's out of their normal range, or it's gone way above, like something's gone wrong, he's eaten something, or we've forgotten to give him something, and the ketones have gone out of whack. So if this was, I think this is kind of a fairly important point, that if you're dealing with really severe seizures, as we underneath Sonny's seemingly controlled seizures with the medication, he did have a lot of drops, and it's really scary taking medications away, which was our goal. So we wanted to have medical support for that in case anything happened, in case the seizures got worse suddenly, we could then have medical support in how to tweak the diet. So saying all that, I would actually, I think if I could turn back the clock, I would do what Mike's suggesting, and I would still do the referral for full keto, but I would try modified Atkins in the meantime on a pretty low level. What we actually did was we did a lot of preparation in cutting out sugar, like we'd stopped giving him squash, we'd stopped giving anything with sugar in for quite a while. A lot of preparation like that, taking away bread, things that he didn't really eat that much anyway. So there's a lot of preparation. I was going to say about daily life, the meal planning, the shopping, the cooking, preparation. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of work. Well, to start with, I spent ridiculous amounts of time in the kitchen, cooking and weighing everything to the gram. It still seems insane to cook that way, but it's become normal now, and you just get good at organising. It just becomes part of daily life, and when it's working, you have the motivation to do it. It's a lot of work, definitely. Cooking for the rest of the family, fitting that all in. Yeah, you can see the mess in my kitchen there, and that was even before I'd started cooking dinner for the family that night. It's a difficult one. We sometimes eat together, and Sonny will have, say, the meat component of the meal, and we'll have the same meat, and then he'll have something like celeriac, and we'll have potatoes. Sometimes meals fit in like that, but to be honest, Sonny's doesn't really cope that well with sit-down meals, with the noise and the social aspect of eating, and he's pretty happy eating on his own. So we sit down at the table with him, and with his iPad and everything, and we generally eat like that. Cooking out and about actually is a really difficult thing. Haven't tried holiday yet. I'm definitely not any expert on that, trying to go on holiday with keto. But certainly when he goes, have you got the photo, Mike, of all of the packed up food?
Oh, this one.
It's back there, that one. So this was the day before he was off to respite, so I had to leave instructions and packed up meals. I think it was 7 meals that I needed to pack up, and weigh and prepare, and yeah, that's pretty full on. That happens once a week, so you just need to be organised, basically. There's nothing. That's it. Progress. If you've been following our blog, you'll see that he's made some pretty cool progress. Seizures, we didn't really see any before many before anyway, to be honest, because he was on so many drugs. But we started stripping away the drugs, and the seizures haven't got any worse. And he's now on less drugs than he was when he was diagnosed with epilepsy. He's definitely more awake, more with it. He's answering questions with the yes/no kind of response in his own way. He's better regulated for sure. His self-injurious behaviour and aggressive behaviour to others better, much better. Only when he's like really pushed now. And transitions a little bit better, still hard. And it's great. It's for me and for him, it's worth doing, definitely. We don't know how far we're going to be able to go with weaning the drugs. The drugs aren't evil, but for Sonny, we felt it was slowing his development, and that in turn was not helping him regulate his behaviour. He wasn't able to learn new ways of coping. He just was in a fog, I think. So yeah, he's doing great. Really super happy with that. And then I've said at the bottom there, if I could turn back the clock, I would have done this years ago if I'd known how well it worked. I was knackered back then when Sonny was first diagnosed with epilepsy, and the seizures scared the living daylights out of me. So I just wanted to see them gone, and we gave him the drugs, as everyone does, and it's normal, and that's what you do. And then, you know, a few years down the road, I felt able to take it on. So yeah, if I could, I would have done it a long time ago. And I would be seriously interested to see how young children, before they've even started having seizures, get on with a ketogenic diet. It would be fascinating. There are some syndromes now that are recommended for ketogenic diets, and interestingly, atonic drops and the Deuce syndrome, or Duce, I think you call it, is on the list of particular good responses to ketogenic diet. So it would be great if it was presented as a option, if appropriate, to newly diagnosed, children. It would be great if they knew how well it can work, and that they could use it as a combination, or with drugs, or instead of, or just as an option, so you're not forced to try 15 different horrendous drugs and have all those side effects, if there is a better way. So I hope that's helpful. If there's any questions, let me know.
Super. I want to be respectful of people's time. I mean, I'm happy to go over, but if people have to drop, let me let Monica get through her slides. Just since I'm talking, Sarah, how many drugs have you tried with Sonny? And now, am I correct, you're down to 1 and you're giving him less than you gave him when you started?
We were on 2 before we started keto. We've only tried 3. We were actually given it as a sort of option when we first started. I think, like I said, I was really scared when he first started having seizures, and I think I kind of stumbled across it, and the doctor kind of put me off a little bit, because she said, well, it's a lot to deal with. She didn't say no. I could have pressed it, and she gave me a whole form and everything, but I didn't do it. So I think here it's more often now that you can just request it, and that you don't have to have tried lots of drugs. But yeah, we only tried 3. I didn't want to try anymore.
Right, I don't blame you. Okay, awesome. We'll open it up for questions at the end. Monica, can I give it over to, and these are some lovely pictures of Sonny and Sonny cooking, and
Sonny being funny.
Sonny being funny. Monica, let me unmute you. Hang on, I have too many computers here. Okay.
Okay. So here's Jaxon. He is going to be 14 at the end of October. So he's in full puberty and growing like crazy. And I wanted to point out that we had celiac diagnosis of celiac before anything else. So, and listening to Sarah, it sounds like we are on a modified keto diet, because we have taken this keto diet. I've taken it on myself. Initially, I guess it would be in the spring, I saw that movie, The Magic Pill, and I just knew I had to revamp our entire diet, and especially having athletes in our family. But so we were already gluten-free, but even though we were gluten-free, a lot of the foods were just full of carbs. And then here comes Sarah, and if you can go to the next slide, Mike. So here's Jaxon's history of medications since this whole journey began, and my fear is this is temporary, or these medications have always been temporary. We're in a really good place right now with our ONFI and CBD and THC. We've been in this place for, gosh, 3 years now. However, my fear is this is temporary. How long will this last? And that's when I saw Sarah and her whole blog with Dani, and I would just follow it and watch her measure, and that's when my research started. And I have to say that there's so much research out there, even basic things like on Pinterest. So I did a ton of homework before we did this, and we did this as an entire family. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so I knew we'd have to do this as a family. We were already gluten-free. I don't have celiac disease, but I've been gluten-free just because the family is, and it makes things a whole lot easier. But I had to clean out the house with all these gluten-free carb foods that are, filled with crackers and pretzels. And so even though things are labeled gluten-free, they're just full of nothing. There's very little nutritional value in the majority of gluten-free products that are like crackers or cookies or even the pastas. So I completely cleaned out our house. And then I found this app. It's called the Carb Manager. And this is how I started to track everything I was eating. And this is how I basically shop, is looking at the foods, looking at the carbs. And I knew that we had to go, there's two different versions of keto. There's the clean, which is, low carb vegetables and high clean fats, and that's what we are. And then there's the dirty, which I won't even talk about that. But, and then also I do weigh everything, even for myself. And that's what I wanted to make sure is, can I do this as a person? And can I do this for Jaxon, knowing that he may depend on this at some point if meds have to go by the wayside. So I did invest in a scale and a air fryer. Which is amazing. And we're super lucky that Jaxon eats everything that we eat. He's not picky in that way. He's always been a great eater as far as low carb or veggies, salads, high proteins. So we keep Jaxon's net carbs down to 25 or less a day. And by entering his information into the Carb Manager, that's how I'm able to track what he's getting. And I'm also able to, if you want to go to the next page, Mike. I'm also able, so here's a lowdown of Jaxon, what he eats, broken down by carbs, fats, protein. Again, I did not meet with a dietitian, nutritionist, a doctor. Again, I just did this all by myself. So, and he's still doing well, so to speak. But I enter everything into my Carb Manager. my shopping list is based on, again, this carb manager, as far as it telling me this is high in carbs, you know, limit this, etc. Even down to, you can eat this, but it's not recommended all the time, or in great quantities. But, you know, for myself going keto, I just have a ton more energy. I feel like I don't need to snack between meals. I feel completely satisfied, and I see Jaxon is satisfied as well. Now his seizures are in control, and they were in control prior to starting this. So I can't say that, you know, this has done amazing things for his seizure control, but we'll definitely keep following it. And we're going to keep following it as a family. You know, having older daughters who are into nutrition and fitness, and Aaron, the triathlete that he is, it's a good diet that works for our family. So I'm all about this whole keto diet, and I'm a crazy tracker. And I just wanted to say, I think that might be the last page, but Jaxon is, he completely still can enjoy like his Starbucks. He can enjoy his Carl's Jr. We get, you know, the burgers protein style. They've always been protein style. So this wasn't a change for him. And based on that carb manager, I can input everything and base it. How many French fries can he have? So that's what I learned from Sarah today, that this is based on the modified keto. So he does enjoy some of those things. And as far as Starbucks, we know his order. He orders a Frappuccino. However, the barista knows it's an iced coffee with heavy whipping cream and stevia in a Frappuccino cup. It's all about the presentation for him. So we're able to continue this with him, and he feels included. And yeah, so I have nothing but great things to say about this keto diet. And he'll have labs done in a couple weeks. So this is going to be interesting to compare his labs from last year compared to this year. So yeah.
Thank you, Monica. It's awesome. I'm conscious of time. We have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to say 2 things, maybe 3, and then I'll open it up for questions. And I'm happy to stay on. If people have other things to get to. So if you have questions, we'll take them in a second. Where to go for more info, Matthew's friends and the Charlie Foundation, those links work on the deck. The deck's available on our website. There's our website. And then just a commercial from our sponsor. SynGAP Research Fund is sponsoring a roundtable at AES. If you're like, what is AES? Is the biggest epilepsy conference of the year. It happens to be in America. I'm sorry for the internationals. And it's a really big deal. And Dravet and LGS and a few other groups do roundtables. And what it is we're just gonna rent a room and buy everyone breakfast and have 5 people speak about SynGAP. We're gonna have Ingrid Sheffer and Steve Petrus talking from Australia, Rick Huganier and Jimmy Holder will be talking, and then at least one other person is gonna be talking. So it's gonna be this like 5 of the biggest brains in SynGAP on earth talking about SynGAP for an hour and a half. And since many neurologists on the planet are already gonna be in town, we're just opening it up. So if you know any neurologists, please bit.ly/SynGAP AES on the bottom. Please share that with them. And it would be awesome because we're spending a little money to make this happen, but we really want to get as many scientists and treating clinicians as possible aware of what's going on, because there's a lot going on, and that's a whole other webinar. I just want to I just want to summarize quickly and point out that there really isn't a right answer. So if you're trying to figure out like what the secret to success to keto is, there's the Americans and the Brits do it differently. You can start with hospitalization. You can start with modified Atkins. These terms everyone's got a slightly different definition. I want to be clear, we are under medical supervision. Tony's levels get tested every 6 months. There are weird things that happen with keto. For instance, Tony had a lot of bruising, and one of the doctors which came with the keto for sure, and one of the doctors looked at him and said, you need to start taking vitamin C and vitamin K. And we were like, all right. And we did, and the bruises cleared in 2 days. It was the most amazing thing. I need to add that to this deck. But so there's all kinds of knowledge to be learned, but I think what I hope people take away from this is there are benefits both for seizure control and for development and for reducing the number of AEDs. AEDs aren't bad, but less might be more. And I think every parent on this call will be happy to talk more. So with that, I will open it up for questions. I'm going to unmute everybody. Warning, I am unmuting you if you are on another call. And if you got questions, just bark them out or type them. Anyone? And if you're muted, Hannah and Jess, then I can't unmute you.
So
go ahead.
My question was about how you know in ketosis, and Sarah, you just replied, thank you, about pricking the finger. But what if you're doing, like if we're as a family just putting ourselves onto the modified Atkins, for instance, how do we know then without this little finger prick device that Han will be in ketosis? Or do you just not know?
We use pea strips.
Oh yeah. Is Tony nappies though?
Yeah. You stick a cotton ball in there and you take it out and you squeeze it on the pea strip. It's lovely. As far as the adults though, I think, and Monica might comment on this, you know it because you feel different.
You do.
Okay.
And also by myself using the app, I'm able to scan everything and it calculates for me. Now I do have to measure everything out exactly, properly, but looking at the range, it will tell you, you know, what your carbs to protein and fats are. So that's my rule of thumb.
Okay. So for adults, you do that, and for kids, you do a pea strip if you don't have the finger prick.
Right. That's what we do.
Cool. Thank you.
I was
Mike,
quite
I have a
worried
quick
about the finger
question.
prick, actually, but it's fine. Sonny just holds his hand out for it. Bless him.
I think you're amazing, Sarah, by the way, what you're doing with Sunny. It's awesome.
Thank you. I don't think it's any different to what everyone else does on keto. It's a little more strict, but it's basically the same. It's, yeah, we do our best, don't we?
Did Sunny have to get used to the pricks, or you just went at him and he accepted it?
What, sorry?
Did you have to get Sunny used to the pricks, or did you do any kind of prep work, getting him used to being, you know, with the
being stabbed twice a day with the finger? No, he was okay. He was fine. He doesn't really feel pain in the same way that we do. He was fine. What he hated more actually was holding the finger after to put the drop of blood onto the machine. He hates that more than the. But he's fine. He literally just holds his hand out. It's been, yeah, he's been a trooper. He's really surprised me how well he's eaten the food and how well he's kind of stopped pestering for other food, because he used to just eat constantly. Like, he was obsessed with ice creams and he could eat ice creams all day long. He had an egg obsession. You know how our kids get, you know, seriously fixated on something. Some things were food, so we were really worried about it. But we've been able to find, you know, alternatives for his favorite foods, and he's done great with that. He's been amazing.
Jess, did you have a question?
I have a question. Like, am I talking over somebody? Can you hear me?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, real quick. Is there anybody whose kid had their seizures 100% controlled, but still wanted? I mean, how did you talk your neurologist into going with keto and weaning off medications? Does anybody got any pointers on that? I mean, Dr. Holder seems very well, he is not in favor of it, I should say.
Not in favor of what?
Oh, keto diet. Well, I guess
he?
I'm asking more from the U.S. side than I am from the UK side, because
I wasn't aware of that.
Well, and that was with our particular case. I don't know. I mean, I guess,
Yeah,
if
I
medication's
wasn't
working.
aware of that, but then he loves Lamictal and I hate it, so.
See, Lamictal, it worked well for seizures and it seemed to calm him down a little, but right now we do have other behavior issues.
Yeah.
So nobody had to really sell this to their neurologist.
I mean, the way we did it, so first of all, we also tried Lamictal, and that was the drug I dropped as fast as I could.
Really?
But I mean, no neurologist will or should say, yeah, sure, stop taking the drugs, right? But it would be hard for them to argue against adding keto and then weaning drugs, which if I've heard correctly is I think what Sarah's doing. But yeah, if BCH is like keto's not worth it, and I want to make a point about this keto versus modified Atkins and the medicalized bit. If you're on modified Atkins, it'd be really hard for you not to get the basic nutrients the body needs. If you're on full medical 4-to-1 or more keto, one of the reasons you have to get your levels checked is because you can start running deficits of critical nutrients, right?
Yeah,
so
that's really
important.
So it's not a like, oh, we're getting tested, we're not. There's actually a reason for that. So if you're on modified Atkins, your body's getting enough of the basics. If you're on keto, you need to make sure that you're supplementing appropriately, yada, yada, yada. So you need the hospital to help you do keto. You don't need the hospital to experiment with less carbs, more fat. And speaking for myself, that alone brings about positive behavior changes. Now, if you're on an AED that's causing other issues, that could trump everything. But again, Olga, we're not saying, I mean, I'm not giving any medical advice, but I am pointing out that if you want to do keto, even if the hospital is behind you, I would encourage you to do modified Atkins for a few months first, regardless.
Yeah.
So there's nothing stopping you then.
I think it's important to point out that it's not necessarily a choice like, oh, I think I'll do keto, or I think I'll do, I mean, it's a place to start, but each kid is different. Each kid will make ketones differently. Some kids will only make therapeutic ketones in a very high range with a lot, you know, on the high ratio. You can't choose to do a modified Atkins with a kid like that. It just won't work. They need, you know, and yeah, Mike's absolutely right. The more fat, the higher, the stricter the diet, the higher the fat, the more side effects, you know, potential side effects like kidney stones and things like that. But yeah, I think from just looking at Sonny's food over the weeks, he eats great. He eats probably better than your average kid, I would say.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, no. Well, one of the positive things that I've learned for those of us with boys, I don't know if anybody else has encountered this, but our epileptologist said that once boys going through puberty, seizures tend to subside significantly. So that's promising for those of us with boys. It's got to do with the hormones. And she discovered that with, I guess, a child or somebody who was having a gender change surgery. So I was just thought that might give some hope to some people. That, and again, I'm not giving medical advice. This is just what our epileptologist had discovered.
So our dietitian, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, to your point about weaning, our dietitian and our doctor do talk to each other. You know, they correspond really well together, and they did, and it was a kind of a decision between all of us whether to start weaning and when to start weaning. And the general feeling was that if you have, say, I think it was like a month of consistent ketones, no increase in seizures, start weaning. And it was simple as that. We were given a schedule and we started. If the seizures come back, you know, we go back to them and have another plan.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. This is okay, great.
But I don't know if all of you saw it, but there is a child, a SynGAP child that was on 3 AEDs, lots and lots of seizures, and she was on keto for, I believe, 3 years, was weaned off, and she is seizure free, which is amazing.
She was weaned off the AEDs.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that can we attribute to her ketosis as opposed to her age? Because I've heard lots of comments that say, you know, children age out of epilepsy. So how can we correlate those two?
I don't think, I would be surprised if SynGAP children age out of their epilepsy. I think that can be the case for some childhood epilepsies, but I would be
Genetic,
surprised.
probably not.
I
Yeah.
would be surprised to see evidence of SynGAP children's seizures getting better. I haven't known of that. Does anyone else?
No, I'm with Sarah. I don't.
There's
I mean,
nothing in the literature about them improving with age.
If you search the literature, there's a couple of adults who've been diagnosed that are, I think, still seizing. There's like a 34-year-old in Eastern Europe and a 70-something in the UK. But no, I think, Sarah, in the case you just mentioned, this girl was on 3 AEDs. She went keto, weaned off all the AEDs. Is she still in keto, or did they also stop keto and she was done seizing? Right, and that's not unheard of either. I mean, there's people who use keto as a 2 to 3 year therapy, and then they stop in it, and that's the only explanation there would get us back to that Cell paper from UCLA where they've totally changed their biome, right? Or the microbiome. But that's well beyond the scope of this, of my training. That's that.
Hello? Hello, you're there. Something
Hello.
happened.
I also did have a question from a digestive perspective. Has it made any difference? Are you dealing with constipation, diarrhea? Like, I'm going to be the one to ask the poop question.
It's a great question. I would point out that those chia seeds in Tony's breakfast are amazing. I mean, they're little fiber bombs. And not to be too graphic, but just go ahead and take chia every morning for a week, see what happens. I mean,
yeah, because I'm already at the other end of the constipation curve, so I'm trying not to make that worse.
So, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say it's kind of in the literature that generally constipation can get worse on keto. That's quite a common side effect. Sometimes it's temporary. We had the opposite, and actually Sonny was on Movicol from the age of, well, about 12 months old, really. And when we started keto, we no longer needed it.
Great.
At all. We haven't given it to him once since. I attribute that to coconut oil. He has a certain amount of coconut oil per day, and he just literally doesn't need the constipation medication anymore. It was a total.
What was that word, Sarah? You attributed to what?
Coconut oil.
Coconut oil. See, Sarah's probably right, but I would have a different take. I think kids who are on keto can be put on keto by drinking this horrible stuff called Keto Cal, which is this chemical concoction that's 4 to 1, and it's just this disgusting chemical mix. And there's zero fiber. It's just this soup. And of course they're constipated, right? Especially our kids who are naturally predisposed. But if you've got a kid like Sonny who's got Sarah cooking real food for him, or a kid like Tony who's on modified Atkins, where the math is net carbs. So if I give him a banana, I can give him this much banana. But if I give him a raspberry or strawberry, which are high in fiber, I can give him a lot more. Yeah. So because we're optimizing the net carbs. So and that's the math we do, right? We're like, well, how much real food can we give this kid that's inherently fibrous so that we can actually give him some food? Mm. And so by optimizing for net carbs and giving the kids real food, you're also optimizing for fiber intake, which helps with the constipation battle, right? Mm. So I think keto well done could actually be a good remedy for constipation.
But I also have a sense that it does have some kind of action with the general gut, bacteria, and there's some sort of healing going on there. I'm not sure what. He seems just less windy, doesn't fart as much, which is great. He's just. And his other strange things, like you're supposed to be looking for vitamin deficiencies and mineral deficiencies. Yeah, for the first time we've had to cut Sonny's fingernails and toenails. He just seems generally healthier. But then, conversely, I know of another SynGAP child who was on keto for 2 years, I think, and he was ill that entire time. like ill, just cold after flu, after bug, after everything. He just never got better, and they had to take him off it. So I think every child is different, but I think this is keto. If I could say one thing about it, is that you can, anyone can try it, and you know, it's the least scary thing for us to try out of everything. That's, you know, all the treatments that we get, you know, options and people seeing other people use. Keto is the one thing that's not going to do any harm and could probably do some good.
Agreed. Anyone else? Jess, you have more?
Infinite amount of questions. But anyone else before I ask more?
Peter? Verena? Lauren? Okay.
I just have one more. So I saw you, Sarah, you said if you could go back and do it all over again, you'd start with a young child. So I'm in that situation. So I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. She has this mosaic form of SynGAP, but we do see a lot of the, I've got a bit of an echo there, a lot of the symptoms are starting to become more apparent now that we know what they are. So my plan is during ketosis without consulting with neurologist. She doesn't really present as having seizures, at least when any that we can pick up on EEG. I believe she is having them. They're just not very frequent, or frequent enough to get medical evidence of. But what I'm doing is just introducing the foods and trying to limit, as you said, the crap. And here in America, they love to give children crap snacks. You see kids walking around with a little plastic bag full of Cheerios. So just trying to educate people, you know, don't give her those things, and trying to knock them out of the diet. I think is quite challenging, especially for a tiny toddler, where they, you know, it's like, well, they're burning energy all day long. They need, you know, snacks and constant intake of food. I think for me, that's quite challenging. So I have to think, like, what can I send to daycare that they can give her at snack time that's going to be healthy and, you know, not full of carbohydrates. I'm sure there's many snacks out there that I can start to learn how to make. Yeah.
Once you start looking, I think it's quite easy to get overwhelmed and feel like you need an entire cookery book all at once. But really, you know, you could have a few snacks, a few meals, and just rotate them, and then gradually add in more meals and snacks as you learn. You know, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. That's the other thing about I was going to say about picky eaters. Like, all of us are quite lucky in that our children eat, but our dietitian has told us about other children that she has, that they literally only have, say, 3 meals that they will eat, but they're ketogenic meals, so the diet will still work. Yeah, they're more likely to get deficient, but the diet can still work even if they're super picky. I think that's really interesting. And also, you know, there's quite a few of our SynGAP children that are tube fed, and there is a formula version of keto, you know, that would be a great option for people, I think. But yeah, perfect. At 2.5, I wish I could go back and give Sunny a keto diet. Gosh, I wish I did. And totally off the point, but CBD as well, because I met someone in, at the Edinburgh Festival who had a young child who was having seizures, and they gave them no anti-epileptics, but gave them CBD. It stopped the seizures. They decided to take the CBD away, and the child is still seizure-free. Amazing.
Was that a SynGAP child, or was that a child with a different? Okay.
No, SynGAP child. Met the lady. She was Canadian but living in Scotland.
Okay. What's the downside to CBD? I don't know. This is off topic, but are there any downsides to it?
Aaron about that. Monica's Aaron.
I think that's the topic of our next webinar, Jess. So stay tuned. Because we have a lot to talk about.
But yeah, on the you know, I've mentioned that because I think, you know, early intervention as much as possible is always key, and if you can do anything to, you know, if the keto diet is neuroprotective in any way, then gosh, yes, I would do it.
Thank you.
And
If you
Jess,
can.
just to, yeah, I totally, Sarah, you are the star of the show. Jess, I would pile on, snacks in America are doubly hard because if you're a keto kid, nut butters are your friend. Macadamia nuts are naturally keto ratio. Yeah. If you send a nut to an American school, they're going to send the police to your house because some kid's got a nut allergy. So it's exhausting in that regard.
Yeah.
But like raspberries, red peppers, if you can get away with, and then there's this whole, and I can send you a link to our cookbooks, Jess. In fact, anyone on here, send me an email, I'll send you a link to our cookbooks. There's this, it's called the fathead bread. And it's basically you take mozzarella cheese and you add in cream cheese and then you add a little bit of almond flour, and that makes this thing that ends up looking like bread, although it's really just baked cheese. And because there's a little bit of almond flour there, we had to get like a special dispensation to send it to school, but that's what Tony confuses with bread.
Okay.
It's doable. There are solutions.
Thank you.
And they're delicious, by the way.
Yeah, the food is really good. It is good. I have to stop myself from eating it because it's been weighed out, you know.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
No more,
thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Jess, for asking. There's no more. I will declare this a great success, and I will end it. Sarah, thanks for making time. Peter, Lindsay, Verena, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.